So our goal is to try to vaccinate as many homeless individuals, as many illicit drug users as possible so that we can create a herd immunity in this group.
San Diego homeless hit by a deadly outbreak. Today's actions that could help slow it down.
When they asked us if he would donate his body, he looked at me and I looked at him and we both smiled and he said, yes, anything you want.
A last gift to science. The HIV patients connected to a unique San Diego study.
I think my work is most successful when it evokes a sense of wonder, when it sort of seems to be magical.
And we'll show you where math meets art. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. Sidewalks in and around downtown San Diego are getting washed down with bleach to help combat a deadly outbreak of hepatitis A. 15 people have died and nearly 400 have been diagnosed with the virus. Our coverage begins with KPBS reporter Susan Murphy.
A caravan of police cars and cleaning trucks rolled up on 17th Street just after sunrise. Mondays are typically a day when homeless people have to load up their belongings to clear the sidewalk so city workers can rake away the trash left behind.
What's different today is that we are now incorporating a cleaning and sanitizing of the sidewalks in this area. There's a lot of waste. There's a fecal matter. There is trash, refuse.
Mario Sierra is overseeing the cleaning. He says the power spraying and bleaching will take place every other week in areas with high concentrations of homeless people, including streets along the edge of the East Village, which are home to more than 1,000 homeless people. Their encampments line entire city blocks and overflow with soiled clothes and trash. The pavement reeks of urine and feces. Health officials say the unsanitary conditions are a likely contributor to the outbreak.
A lot of people cannot hold their bowels.
Gay Tharp, who lives in a tent on 17th Street, says there aren't enough bathrooms for the hundreds of people who sleep in the area, especially at night. So they create their own makeshift toilets.
Any bucket with a top, the seals, we normally put a bag inside of it, and we use it.
Stephen Hillard has been homeless for 11 years. He's concerned about contracting the potentially deadly virus.
And I've seen a lot of people with yellow eyes and yellow faces, and, I never knew what that was.
Neither did Marcus Hooley. He typically sleeps on 17th Street every night, but he just spent the last 18 days in the hospital.
And at the end of my hospitalization, they said that I had Hep A, and I don't do drugs or anything, so I don't even really know what it is or how I got it.
Along with the sidewalk bleaching, the city has also installed 40 portable hand washing stations. Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
The street washing is just part of the county's response to the outbreak. Our coverage continues with KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman.
San Diego County's public health officer, Dr. Wilma Wooten, says the Hep A outbreak here is the second largest ever in the United States.
Downtown San Diego, El Cajon, our unincorporated area, then Oceanside, Santee, National City. There are cases in many of our municipalities.
So the problem isn't just downtown. Cases of Hep A have been found in homeless and illicit drug users all over San Diego County, and Wooten says she doesn't know when it will end.
We could be doing this for another 6 to 12 months. If it happens sooner than that, that's great, but we are in this for the long haul.
Hep A can be easily spread through close contact and fecal matter. Like if someone with Hep A touches a doorknob and leaves behind a small amount of feces, then you unknowingly touch and ingest that.
That's it. That's the way it's spread. And if more people understand that, they will also understand the importance of washing your hands. It is not a trite or trivial recommendation. It really does make a difference.
What's a little unsettling is someone with Hep A can transmit the virus for up to 2 weeks without showing any symptoms.
but we have vaccines. So our goal is to try to vaccinate as many homeless individuals, as many illicit drug users as possible, so that we can create a herd immunity in this group. Many of them don't have doctors, they don't have transportation to get to a community clinic or a primary care provider. So we really have to go to where they live.
Keep in mind, the Hep A vaccine requires 2 doses 6 months apart. But Dr. Wooten says if a person just gets the first dose, they're still around 85% protected. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Cleanup has begun in Florida after the state took a beating over the weekend from Irma. It entered the Keys as a Category 4 hurricane and left the state today as a tropical storm. Crews in Jacksonville waded through waist-deep water, searching for any stranded victims. 8 deaths are blamed on the storm in the U.S., at least 34 people killed in the Caribbean. More than 7 million households in the Southeast remain without power. California is suing the Trump administration over its decision to rescind the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, known as DACA. State Attorney General Javier Becerra filed the lawsuit today, alleging the White House violated the Constitution and other laws. He addressed the media today with 2 young women who were brought into the country illegally when they were children.
The reality is right now the best way to give them a chance to have a future in America the way they believed is to help preserve the DACA program.
More than a quarter of the 800,000 DACA participants live in California. 15 other states and the District of Columbia have already filed similar lawsuits. Now, following up on the case of a pregnant woman who was detained on her way to work, the San Diego branch of the ACLU is calling on immigration officials to release Maria Solis Hasso from the Otay Mesa detention facility. ACLU leaders say her detention violates ICE policies. Family members are taking care of her daughters now. She spoke to KPBS about her detention a few weeks ago. She says she's been having severe cramping and that a doctor at the facility told her she could lose her baby.
So hearing those words from the doctor, I am scared of having a miscarriage and for them to not do anything.
According to an ACLU letter, doctors told Solis there's nothing they can do if she has a miscarriage, and it won't be their fault if she has one. Immigration and Customs Enforcement did not immediately respond to a request for comment from KPBS regarding this letter. California is suing the Trump administration over federal fuel economy standards, saying the penalties for violating the standards are too low. A new rule was scheduled to take effect in July that would have increased the penalty for automakers who don't meet the federal minimum standard. But automakers objected and the Trump administration delayed the rule. New York, Vermont, Maryland, and Pennsylvania have also filed suit. Nearly half of California college students have to revisit some high school material during their freshman year, costing them an estimated $200 million a year. Colleges are making changes to tackle the problem on their end. KPBS education reporter Megan Burks has a look at what high schools are doing.
Seniors in the Sweetwater Union High School District have a new course to choose from this year.
In discrete math, we are teaching a curriculum that is a non-traditional, non-algebra based mathematics. There is so much more to study in the field of mathematics than algebra and calculus, especially at the college level.
Things like game theory and decoding secret messages. Today, students are creating games and exploring the math behind them.
I'm going to cut it the way you want me to cut it, right?
How mathematics kind of works behind the scenes. You know, the students are collaborating together, they are strategizing, they're solving puzzles, they're trying to prove what they have come up with in their answer in a way that nobody will doubt what their answer is.
Sweetwater is one of 5 California school districts piloting various courses to better bridge high school and college math. The district worked with San Diego State last year to develop the curriculum.
We've had for quite a while a large number of students and a large amount of money being invested in developmental math at the community college and CSU level. So one of the goals of the grant and of the state was to try to reduce that expenditure, but also the waste of time on the part of students. So how can we get students interested in mathematics, keep them interested in the pipeline, but at the same time try to figure out what's going on.
So you guys think that you're onto something for the strategy? Let's test it out. Do you want to go first or second?
We are really trying to create students who can think critically. I am not interested in creating a student who can read back to me what I just said to them. That to me is not worth much.
And I think also a little bit of loving the math again. I think somewhere along the way when algebra was introduced, they kind of lost the love of math because, it started to get a little bit more challenging and more abstract.
8 weeks into the school year, it seems to be working.
And I like here in Discrete because it's much simpler. It's more about how we got the answer, but not about the way to get to the answer.
The district and San Diego State researchers will share their results with the state at the end of the year and make their curriculum public for other schools to implement. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
I'm John Yang. On the next news hour, we're on the ground in Florida with the latest on the aftermath of Hurricane Irma. That's Monday on the PBS NewsHour.
Thousands of people gathered at the World Trade Center in New York today to remember the deadly 9/11 attacks that took place 16 years ago. The anniversary of the attack is marked every year by the reading of the victims' names.
My grandmother, Ruth Sheila Lapin. Grammy Ruth, I wish more than anything that I could have met you. I know that you were a wonderful person, and I love hearing stories about you from my parents. Thank you so much for raising my mom to be the amazing person that she is. I'm very proud to be your namesake.
President Trump spoke at the Pentagon, and Vice President Mike Pence addressed an observance at the Flight 93 National Memorial near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. In San Diego, hundreds turned out for a ceremony on the deck of the USS Midway Museum to mark the anniversary of 9/11. Mayor Kevin Faulkner, San Diego Fire Chief Brian Finnessy, and Dan Miller with the Wounded Warrior Project were among the speakers. Afterwards, people lined up to read the names of New York firefighters who died in connection with their rescue efforts at the World Trade Center. Retired firefighter John Henderson was working in the Bronx on September 11th.
I just want to thank everyone here for coming out and keeping our promise to never forget. It means a lot to see you all here today.
Afterwards, people at the memorial service lined up to read the names of New York firefighters who had died in connection with their rescue efforts at the World Trade Center. Bill Hay is a survivor of the attacks in New York. He spoke at Grossmont College this morning and urged students, many who were babies at the time, to educate themselves about what happened on 9/11.
It changed the entire world, not just America, but the whole world has changed because of it.
Square, where we checked into the
Hayes says he was on the 55th floor of Tower 1 when the first plane hit on 9/11. He was giving a seminar at the time, and he and all 17 students made it safely out of the building. Volunteers set up 2,977 flags to honor those who lost their lives 16 years ago. When HIV first started spreading in the U.S., it was for many a death sentence. Today, it's manageable for those who can access the right drugs, but there's still no cure. And a team of researchers in San Diego says to get there, scientists need to study HIV patients at the end of their lives. KPBS science reporter David Wagner tells us about an ambitious new study and the people signing up for it.
Okay.
Blake Miller's home in Oak Park comes to life when he opens the door for his energetic little dogs.
This is Sage, and this is Cinnamon.
Cayenne and Ginger round out the pack. Miller calls them his Spice Girls.
What? What?
But these days, the house is quieter. Miller's long-term partner, Anthony Bennett, recently died from ALS.
This is him in his Army uniform, yeah.
They were both in the military, back when you could get kicked out just for being gay. It was a different time, not just in the military, but for anyone like Miller's partner who became HIV positive.
He probably lost over 100 friends that died of HIV. And the friends that he did have were of the mind that, you know, we're sick, we could die, but we're going to live, and they lived to the fullest that they could.
Against the odds, Bennett survived long enough to see HIV become something people could live with thanks to antiretroviral drugs. Along the way, he participated in many research studies. Miller says Bennett was motivated in part by feelings of survivor's guilt. And when ALS gave him only months to live, he wanted to keep giving back in some way.
Over the years, you get to learn to know somebody, and his biggest thing was helping others.
That's where a new research effort at UC San Diego came in. The Last Gift Study focuses on HIV patients at the end of their lives. Participants with a terminal illness stop taking their HIV drugs toward the end, and they let researchers draw blood regularly to monitor the activity of the virus. They also consent to having their bodies autopsied within hours of death.
When they asked us if he would donate his body, he looked at me and I looked at him, and we both smiled, and he said, yes, anything you want.
UC San Diego's Davey Smith leads the study. He says the goal is to find out how the virus persists in patients' bodies, how it changes, and how it comes back when drugs are no longer keeping it under control.
When people stop their medication, the vast majority of them, the virus comes back within about 4 weeks. And where that virus comes from and where it is hiding while the therapy is on is still unknown.
Smith says this is what's needed to advance research toward developing a cure. And it's only ethical to study HIV patients who've stopped taking their meds when they're already near death.
So here it is very clear. They are not going to benefit anything from this study. We are not trying to cure whatever is causing them to be terminally ill. So when they participate, they are doing so out of the real goodness out of their heart.
Susana Concha Garcia is an outreach coordinator for the study. She talks with people who lived through the AIDS crisis of the 80s and 90s and had to watch their friends die.
They don't know why they didn't. They're the ones that they made it. And so they want to give something back.
The researchers realize this study asks a lot of patients and their loved ones. National AIDS Treatment Advocacy Project Executive Director Jules Levin wonders, is it worth it?
And in the end, are we ever going to really find a cure?
Levin thinks too much research is focused on a cure at a time when more and more HIV patients are dealing with aging-related problems like cognitive impairment, frailty, and higher cancer rates, problems that he feels are not being adequately addressed.
Should we be doing cure research? Yes. But it's sucking all the air out of the aging problem in this country.
Smith agrees that the more immediate needs of an aging HIV population are important to address. He says his colleagues are working on that in other ways, but he thinks efforts like the Last Gift Study are important too.
And we need a cure for HIV because thousands of people still get infected in the United States every year, and thousands of people die, and there's still a stigma attached to it. So having a cure for HIV would be one of the modern miracles if possible.
For now, the Last Gift Study is only observing patients at the end of their lives. But Smith says this research could eventually progress to more aggressive experimental treatments, perhaps tweaking patients' immune systems in attempts to completely eradicate the virus. So far, Anthony Bennett is the only patient to have completed the study, and the researchers say it's far too early to report any results. Blake Miller says he's proud of his partner.
So for him, knowing that it was the last gift, the last thing that he could do, it made him very happy.
The Last Gift Study aims to enroll about 5 patients per year over the next 5 years. David Wagner, KPBS News.
Well, if you spend any time outdoors today, it may not have felt like it, but San Diego is cooling down this week. Aaron Calandra has more in tonight's forecast.
We are still seeing some spotty showers and thunderstorms, mainly in the mountains, also in the desert, some here closer to inland. We have a low pressure system that's spinning in the Pacific, pulling some moist air into the coastal areas. That's why we've seen an uptick in some of that wet weather, especially a little bit to the north of us. San Francisco even saw some showers, some thunderstorms as well. And again, that's all because of a system right off the coast that's just pulling in the moist air and causing some thunderstorms. For tonight, we're going to see a couple of clouds, 70 degrees for our low temperature, so a bit warm here tonight. By morning time, of course, those clouds are going to be there, but breaking up throughout the day. Our temperatures, Oceanside 66, Poway 68, Ramona 64 degrees, Chula Vista 69 tonight for our overnight lows. Tomorrow, plenty of sunshine for everyone. Of course, along the coast again, a couple of clouds when you wake up. Borrego Springs 104, Mount Laguna 78, Alpine 88 degrees, and San Diego 80 for the high temperatures. And again, we could see some brief showers in places. Here is the big picture for Tuesday. It is hot in the deserts. Phoenix still in the 100s, but Las Vegas finally dropping down to the double digits. That's what we'll see here in our deserts as well. So along the coast, we are in the 70s for much of the week, dropping down to 71 on Friday. That is below average, so certainly some cool conditions there. Inland, we're in the 80s, but the real feel will be in the 90s, especially Tuesday and also into Wednesday. Cooling down, though, 79 Thursday and Friday, so certainly a nice little break. In the mountains, we're in the 70s, even in the 60s Thursday and Friday, so cooling down, but at least it's going to be sunny and beautiful. And then in the deserts, excuse me, look, a nice little break. We start off in the triple digits, where we've been for quite some time, and then dropping down to the double digits, 94 degrees on Friday and sunny, so really a beautiful day. A nice little break from some of that heat in the deserts. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra.
Take a look at this. It's art that moves, shifts, and shapes. A professor at Stanford is using mathematical patterns to craft these sculptures. In tonight's SciTech Report, producer Luke Groskin explains how these designs unfold.
I'm John Edmark. I'm an artist, designer, and inventor, and I teach at Stanford University. I don't think of myself as a sculptor. Clearly, the works are sculptures of sorts, but in a sense that's a coincidence. They're just the medium that I'm using to ask and answer questions that I'm interested in. The driving motivation in my work is a search for unusual behaviors, things that are non-intuitive, that maybe seem impossible. Math has a kind of precision and a way of clarifying relationships that allows me to achieve some of these behaviors and patterns that I'm trying to create. I was working with essentially flat puzzles. I noticed that perimeter never changed shape, it just changed in scale as you added or removed pieces. And that then led to the notion of stacking these one on top of the other and rotating them relative to each other to cause these patterns to appear in the form of sort of plateaus that could move up and down the tower. And I'm rotating it each time. I'm rotating it at 137.5 degrees, the golden angle, which is based on the golden ratio. The golden ratio is the ratio where the smaller is to the larger as the larger is to the whole. And it ends up, this is a very powerful generative ratio. Anytime you create a pattern using the golden angle, you're going to end up with spirals appearing, and it's actually been shown mathematically to be the best way to distribute leaves on a stem to minimize overlap. Say a leaf or a petal or a seed gets put out here, the next one will get put out 137 degrees around over here, and the next one then gets put out 137 degrees over here, and around and around and around, placing these and placing these. And when that's done in that fashion, you end up getting these kinds of very evenly distributed seed heads. But the spirals are actually a symptom of this process of placing each bud 137 degrees around from the previous bud. When I was wanting to demonstrate this transforming nature of the towers, I decided to animate them. And when I animated it, I was surprised to discover that not only did it show plateaus appearing and disappearing, but there was this very strong sense of continuity of the plateaus moving down the tower or up the tower. about 5 years later, I suddenly realized, oh, what if I just keep on rotating the entire tower, not just the next level? And in fact, blooms are a direct descendant of a multi-year long sequence of explorations on these golden angle spiral geometry studies. I call them blooms because they tend to have a sense of blossoming, opening, expanding to them as they animate. When a bloom is animating, it's endless. If a plant could grow forever, it would kind of be doing that blooming behavior forever. I think my work is most successful when it evokes a sense of wonder, when it sort of seems to be magical. What I'm trying to achieve in my work is something that will evoke that in somebody else, that they'll say, wow, what's going on there? How is that possible?
You can see more stories like that one on SciTech Now, Sundays at 5:30 on KPBS. Now here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, warships worries. The fate of littoral combat ship is uncertain after delays, mechanical problems, and cost overruns. And on Midday Edition, too many art exhibits. Balboa Park is showcasing work from an artist who paved the way for modern art. That's tomorrow at noon on KPBS Radio. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.
For the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the